I always thought long-distance business trips were the hardest part of our marriage. Every time my wife Chloe boarded that flight to Denver, my heart broke. But last Tuesday, I decided to surprise her. I flew out on the next flight, flowers in hand, ready to show her how much I loved her. Instead, I stood across the street and watched her walk into a house that wasn't ours, and be greeted by a little girl who called her mommy. The little girl ran straight past me. Not toward me, past me, like she already knew I didn't belong there. I was standing 20 feet away from the picnic table with my wife's phone charger in my jacket pocket and cold wind cutting through downtown Denver. The smell of wet grass and charcoal drifted across the park. Somewhere behind me, a dog barked twice and then stopped. The man sitting beside my wife looked confused. My wife looked terrified. But the girl barely looked at me at all. That was the first thing that felt wrong. Not the second family. Not the lies. Not even the child. It was the way the girl reacted, like I was the stranger she'd been warned about. I remember Chloe gripping the edge of the picnic table so hard her knuckles lost color. A juice box had tipped over beside her purse. Apple juice leaked slowly into the grass. Nobody moved. The air felt thin. Then the man beside her stood up carefully, like he already understood something I didn't. And that was the moment I realized I had made a mistake flying there. A huge one. Because whatever was happening, it wasn't as simple as catching my wife cheating. 3 days earlier, I still believed my marriage made sense. We lived outside Austin in one of those new subdivisions where every house looked staged for a real estate ad. White stone exterior, black trim, quiet streets, sprinklers clicking before sunrise. Chloe traveled constantly. Consulting work. That was the explanation for almost everything. Delayed texts. Last-minute flights. Hotel receipts. Calls at midnight from airport lounges. I believed it because the rest of our life felt normal enough to support the lie. Sunday mornings were always the same. Coffee grinder at 7:10. The low hum of the refrigerator. Cold hardwood floors. Chloe sitting cross-legged on the kitchen counter wearing one of my old college sweatshirts while reading emails on her tablet. Nothing dramatic. Nothing suspicious. Just routine. The kind that slowly convinces you you're safe. The first crack appeared on a Thursday night. I was working late in the upstairs office when an alert appeared on our shared smart home app. Front door unlocked, Denver, Colorado. At first I thought it was a software glitch. We owned one house. In Texas. I opened the notification history. Same thing happened 2 weeks earlier. Then again the month before that. Different times. Always Denver. I remember staring at the screen while the AC rattled softly overhead. My coffee had gone cold hours earlier. The room smelled faintly metallic from the rain outside. I almost asked her immediately. Instead, I checked our shared banking account. That's when I found the grocery charges. Small ones. Milk. Fruit snacks. Paper towels. Children's vitamins. All from the same neighborhood in Denver. I didn't sleep much that night. Around 2 a.m., Chloe rolled over beside me and rested her hand against my chest. I remember how normal that felt. That was the disturbing part. The next morning, she flew to New York. At least that's what she told me. Her suitcase sat open on the bed while steam drifted from the bathroom mirror. She moved calmly, efficiently, like someone who had repeated the same routine hundreds of times. After she left, I did something I'd never done before. I went to her office. I wasn't angry yet. Just unsettled. There's a difference. The room smelled faintly like expensive perfume and printer toner. Her desk was perfectly organized except for one locked drawer. Inside her filing cabinet, I found an old boarding pass. Not hers. The last name matched hers. But the first name was Lena. I stared at it for a long time. Same Denver route. Same airline she always used. The date was from 6 years earlier, before we met. That should reassured me. Instead, it made things worse, because I realized the lies were older than our relationship. That afternoon, another clue surfaced by accident. A tagged photo on social media. Some woman in Denver posting pictures from a neighborhood block party. In the background, blurry but recognizable, was Chloe. Not business clothes. Jeans. Hair tied back. Holding a little girl on her hip. I zoomed in until the image broke apart into pixels. The child looked around 4 years old. I kept staring at the photo because of one tiny detail. The girl was wearing the same yellow raincoat I'd seen in our American Express statement 2 months earlier. Children's Boutique, Denver. I had joked about it at the time. We didn't have kids. So who was the coat for? My stomach started tightening in waves. That night, I called Chloe. She answered immediately. Too quickly. Her voice sounded tired, controlled. She claimed she was ordering room service at the hotel. But I couldn't hear anything. No ice machine. No hallway noise. No distant TVs. Just silence. And once, very faintly, a child laughing somewhere nearby. After the call ended, I booked a flight to Denver. I didn't tell anyone. Not even my brother. At 5 a.m., I was sitting alone in Austin Airport watching janitors polish empty floors beneath fluorescent lights. My phone battery kept vibrating with flight delay notifications. Chloe texted me a heart emoji while I was boarding. I still remember looking at it while fastening my seatbelt. It felt rehearsed. The house was in a quiet suburb outside Denver. 2-story brick, blue shutters, basketball hoop over the garage. I parked across the street inside a rental car that smelled like stale cigarettes and lemon cleaner. At 6:12 p.m., Chloe arrived. She stepped out of an SUV laughing at something the driver said. A man came around the front of the vehicle and kissed her. Not casually, comfortably, like muscle memory. Then the little girl ran out through the front door screaming, "Mom!" I thought the shock would feel explosive. It didn't. It felt numb. Like my body stopped processing information correctly. The girl wrapped herself around Chloe's waist while Chloe lifted her automatically, effortlessly. The kind of movement that only comes from repetition. I sat there for almost an hour watching through the windshield while porch lights flickered on across the neighborhood. Eventually, the man grilled burgers in the backyard. The child chased Bubbles across the lawn. And my wife looked happier than I had seen her in years. That was the part that hurt. Not the affair. Not even the second family. It was realizing she had an entire version of herself that existed without me. I spent 2 more days following them. I learned the man's name was Garrett. Financial advisor. Local church volunteer. No criminal record. Perfect suburban life. Except my wife was somehow inside it. I almost confronted her at the house. Instead, I waited until Saturday at a park near Sloan's Lake. The wind carried the smell of sunscreen and lake water. Bicycle chains clicked past on the trail. Kids screamed somewhere near the playground. I walked toward the picnic table holding her charger in my pocket. When Chloe saw me, all color drained from her face. Garrett stood slowly. The little girl froze beside the blanket. I placed the charger on the table. And for a second, nobody breathed. I expected excuses, panic, begging, confessions. Instead, Garrett looked at Chloe with genuine confusion, like he hadn't known about me either. That changed everything. The lies started collapsing after that. Not because Chloe confessed, because Garrett did. We ended up sitting inside his garage that evening while rain hammered the roof hard enough to drown out traffic. The place smelled like motor oil and wet concrete. Chloe barely spoke. Garrett did most of the talking because he was just as destroyed as I was. According to him, Chloe had been his wife for 7 years. Not legally, but practically. Shared accounts, school records, medical paperwork. The child believed Chloe was her biological mother. My hands actually started shaking when he showed me photos. Christmas mornings, Disney trips, birthdays, years of them. Entire timelines I had never seen. But then Garrett showed me something worse. A photo from 8 years earlier. Chloe standing beside another man. Wedding dress, different state, different name. I felt cold immediately. Garrett explained he found the photo 2 months earlier hidden inside old cloud backups. Chloe claimed the man was an abusive ex-boyfriend she escaped from. But Garrett never fully believed her. Then he handed me another document. Life insurance paperwork. 3 separate policies. 3 separate men. All connected to Chloe under variations of her maiden name. That was when the room started feeling smaller. The fluorescent light overhead buzzed constantly. Rainwater slid beneath the garage door in thin lines. Chloe finally spoke, quietly, carefully. She admitted the double life, but not for the reasons I expected. She said she'd spent almost 10 years moving between relationships because she was terrified of being abandoned financially again after growing up poor. One relationship became two, then two became systems. Separate states, separate identities, separate routines. Everything compartmentalized. Airlines, phones, bank accounts, addresses. She cried only once. Not when I confronted her. Not when Garrett threatened to call the police. Only when the little girl knocked on the garage door asking if Mom was okay. That sound broke something in her. And for a moment, I actually pitied her. Then Garrett opened one final folder. And the entire story changed again. Because inside was a private investigator report. About me. At first, I thought Chloe had investigated me before we met. That would made sense. But the report wasn't recent. It was 9 years old, created before I ever knew her. The investigator had documented my apartment, my routines, my work schedule, my debts, pages and pages of surveillance photos. I recognized the coffee shop near my old office, my first car, even the laundromat I used back then. Then I saw the investigator's client name, Garrett. I remember the silence after that. Just rain tapping against the gutters outside. Garrett looked pale. He kept insisting he didn't understand. But he did. Slowly. At the same speed I did. Because Chloe hadn't randomly built multiple families. She had targeted men deliberately. Men with financial instability, loneliness, isolation. Men easy to emotionally anchor. Garrett had hired the investigator years earlier while working for a debt recovery company. He used private surveillance firms to profile vulnerable clients. That's how Chloe found us. Not by accident. Through him, he had unknowingly supplied the information that allowed her to build entire lives around people like me. But the second twist came hours later, after Chloe finally left the house. Garrett and I sat in silence drinking whiskey neither of us could taste. Then he asked me something strange. Why I never mentioned Nashville. I felt my stomach drop immediately. Because Nashville was where I met Chloe. And I had never told him that. Not once. Garrett walked to a cabinet and pulled out another file. Older than the others. Inside was a photo of me. Standing beside Chloe. 11 years earlier. At a hotel conference in Tennessee. My arm around her waist. Smiling. I barely remembered it. At first. Then pieces returned slowly. Conference bar. Too much bourbon. One night. I had met her years before Austin. Years before our first meeting. And suddenly the timeline made sense. I wasn't the second family. I wasn't even the first. I was the prototype. The first successful test. The first man Chloe learned how to build a life around. And the worst part? Somewhere deep down. I think I knew that the entire time. Because when I finally went back to Austin and unlocked the front door to our empty house, I walked straight to the hallway closet and reached automatically toward the hidden panel behind the shelves. Like I'd done it before. Inside were old burner phones, expired IDs, and cash bundles I had forgotten existed. I stood there listening to the refrigerator hum in the dark kitchen while Denver rainwater still dried on my shoes. Then I remembered why Chloe chose me first. Because I taught her how. That was the night I realized I had never been trying to find her secrets. I was trying to remember mine.